Now, Boris Johnson is facing fierce criticism over alleged comments he made about lockdown.
The Prime Minister has been forced to deny reports. He said he'd rather see the bodies pile high than have another lockdown. Joining us now is the Secretary for Work and Pensions, Thérèse Coffey. Ms Coffey, it's good to see you this morning, back on Good Morning Britain. These are desperate allegations about the Prime Minister. If they're true, Boris on the ropes is the headline in the Daily Mail this morning, and another separate story in the Times. Johnson said he would let COVID rip in a lockdown row. Specifically on this allegation that he said he would rather see the bodies pile high in their thousands. It is a shocking thing for a Prime Minister to say during a pandemic. Shows a cavalier disregard for the agony that people were going through. But he said yesterday he didn't say it. It would also be shocking if that wasn't true. What do you think?
Well, the Prime Minister yesterday said he didn't say it. I take him absolutely his word. Throughout this difficult time, the Prime Minister has tried to make the right judgments, working right across government on how we both try and protect lives and livelihoods. And it's important recognising that we're in the middle of one of the most successful vaccination programmes on the roadmap to recovery. And of course, a lot of people have lost friends and family. It's absolutely been awful. We've seen how that has affected people. I'm also conscious that we're doing our utmost in order to try and keep to that roadmap to recovery, helping people get their back into life as much as normal, but also trying to help particularly our young people who've really been affected by the pandemic, whether it's a loss of schooling hours or indeed trying to get a job.
So you're in a position as a cabinet minister, as a member of the government, where you have to believe the Prime Minister. So despite the fact there are at least two sources, according to our political editor, who say they would be prepared, if asked under oath, they would speak out about what they heard, and they say that they heard him say those precise words. You are saying they're wrong, they're the ones who are lying, the Prime Minister is telling the truth.
Yes, I trust the Prime Minister. It's been nearly 18 months since the election. We have set about in government doing what it is that really matters to people. First of all, delivering Brexit, then having to deal with the coronavirus pandemic, this global pandemic. And we're responding to that with amounts of support in helping people to try and keep their jobs, but also extra support for people now trying to help them get back into work.
It's interesting because yesterday your colleague Michael Gove spoke in the House of Commons, and he didn't say that the Prime Minister didn't say it. He said something different. Let's just have a listen to his words.
The idea that he would say any such thing, I find incredible. I was in that room. I never heard language of that kind.
So he said he found it incredible and that he never heard language of that kind. He didn't say that he didn't say it. He chose his words quite carefully, according to political analysts.
Well, Michael Gove says he was in the room when issues like that was being discussed. He didn't use didn't hear any of that language. The Prime Minister himself said no, he didn't say the words, which some other source has proclaimed that he did. Candidly, the government is absolutely focused on trying to match the people's priorities and deliver against that.
Well, you say, you say the government's absolutely focused, and no one is going to take away, for instance, from the vaccination effort. We all applaud that, and it's a remarkable achievement of the NHS that has happened. But this pertains precisely to the arguments about lockdown. And the accusations against the Prime Minister are that he went to lockdowns late, and these reports suggest that he didn't act quickly enough and, in fact, didn't, in some cases, support further lockdowns. And that's precisely what people are worried about.
Well, the Prime Minister, along with government, working with advisers, have always tried to make judgments based on the information they have, where they think the virus was hitting, and the treatments that could be done in order to try and tackle that. other issues happened along the way, whether it's about the creation of new variants, which was spreading in a different way or more readily than previous aspects of the virus we'd endured before. And that's why the Prime Minister has led the government in trying to keep up with the pace and get through this by making sure that things like the Vaccine Task Force were liberated to go and do and successfully achieve what they've done in securing vaccines from manufacturers around the world. And as you point out, the NHS right across the UK has been at the forefront of making sure the vaccines go into people's arms. So the jabs have been done. We have to keep focusing now on getting new jobs created, and that's why we're doing things like the Kickstart scheme, trying to help a quarter of a million young people get their first foot on the jobs ladder.
Thérèse Coffey, isn't the issue, though, that you want to talk about Kickstart schemes, and rightly so, but unfortunately, for the last few weeks now, we have been caught up in a monumental disaster for the Prime Minister. It's allegation after allegation of cronyism. Some people are calling it corruption at the heart of government. We now have accusations of things that he's said. And the fact, even if he hasn't said it, the fact that people are claiming they were in the room and heard him say it and are willing to, in that case, lie to credible political editors. I mean, that is the issue. We're in a situation, you want to talk desperately about the Kickstart campaign, but we can't do that. We can't, because right at the very top, you have a Prime Minister who is hijacking the headlines with such negativity. That is the problem, isn't it? And how can we move on through this? How will we ever move on through this? So the government
doesn't decide what broadcasters or newspaper proprietors want to write about. What I do know is that being out in the streets, a lot of campaigning is going on in the run-up to the elections. People are right behind the Prime Minister in keeping focused on their priorities. The fact that we have lost a lot of people in the last year has obviously had an emotional impact, but so is the fact that during the lockdown, in the end, schools had to be closed. The Prime Minister wanted to keep them open for as long as possible. We had to respond to the situation at the time. Schools have reopened, but we're conscious that young people have lost out on aspects of hours of learning, and also young people trying to get a job when we know 800,000 people have lost their jobs in the last year. So that's why we're focused on helping millions of people, and 250,000 people in particular, who are young, to get that kickstart opportunity this year.
All these job losses and all these people who are now homeless, people are worse off, and we've got poverty. Does it all lead to an inquiry? Do we really need an inquiry now? Is it that time? We're coming, hopefully, fingers crossed, towards the end of the pandemic. We're going to the endemic. It'll never go away entirely. We're never going to get that day where it's gone. We're always going to be in that scenario. So is now the time to start talking about a proper, official inquiry?
Well, the government has said that we will absolutely have an inquiry, but now is not actually the right time. While I'm really pleased that 60% of adults in this country have had their first dose, nearly 13 million people have had their second dose, but we've still got quite a long way to go along the vaccination journey, as well as reopening the economy. At the same time, Parliament rightly is doing its job of scrutinising, and that's why we're already seeing a lot of investigation of ministers and officials about what has happened along the way. But there will be an inquiry, and the government has already said that will be the case.
When will that be then? When is there going to be the indications? What are the signs when we'll know it's the right time to have an inquiry then?
I don't know the answer to when a formal inquiry will be underway, but government is being scrutinised almost on a daily basis by Parliament in aspects of this, as well as the media. And I think it's important that we try and get through the substance of the vaccinations, the jabs, that we've got that focus on reopening, hopefully on the 21st of June, as long as we're still careful on all the actions that we're taking to get to that point. And then I'm sure that a consideration will be made of what the appropriate time is then to go back and have the inquiry. But we're still very much in that careful steps along the recovery route, and it would be a huge distraction to government right now to even consider an inquiry very soon.
Well,
so it's important we keep along that journey.
It seems the government is already distracted. I mean, we have the allegations of sleaze. We have those texts between Dyson and the Prime Minister over the ventilators. And whether there was a tax deal in the wake of that. We have these allegations over how the Prime Minister got money to refurbish his flat and, the transparency or lack of it over that. And now we have this huge row about insensitive comments that the Prime Minister made when he was opposed to the lockdowns.
He didn't make them,
and
to be clear.
Well, he says he didn't make them. We have other sources who say that they
he
heard
made them.
it.
I'm just pointing out the Prime Minister says he didn't make them.
OK.
Look,
so, well, I'm saying that there is a row over those comments and whether he made them or not. But and also we have this row, and this is what is central, about whether he went to lockdown early enough. And Adil Ray says just there, when is the inquiry going to happen? That is the key thing. We might need another lockdown. We need to know when lockdowns should be triggered. We need to have the answers to these questions. And frankly, almost 130,000 people died in this pandemic. Their families need answers too.
Well, I understand that entirely. And as I say, a lot of people have lost loved ones, family members, friends. We can't recover that, sadly. But what we will do is have the inquiry. But now is not the right time to do it. Not only are we still dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, getting through, say, the vaccinations, but it's the recovery of the economy. The time will come. I don't know when that's going to be, but I'm sure that once we do that, people will see and understand how decisions are being made along the way. The Prime Minister is, as is the Cabinet, absolutely very keen to avoid a third lockdown like we've had before, like we've just recently experienced and are still coming out of. But it's important that we keep along that cautious approach, that careful approach on how we take the next steps when we come to make the decision about whether or not the opening up will go to the next stage in May and June. That is still very much under consideration. There's a number of issues which I know people feel very strongly about when can we potentially open up even more to aspects of social gatherings, very sad gatherings as well, whether that be funerals or happier days in people's lives like weddings. That is still under careful consideration, and I hope we'll be able to say more in the next few weeks.
All right, Thérèse Coffey, thanks very much indeed.